Jake Martinez wiped his hands on his apron and looked at the clock on the kitchen wall. 5:30 in the morning, ship time. The same time he had been waking up for 3 years now. He moved quietly through the small kitchen of the cargo ship. New Horizon. Starting his daily routine just like always. The coffee maker gurgled to life as Jake pulled out ingredients for breakfast. 43 people lived on this ship, and every single one of them would want their morning coffee. Jake knew exactly how each crew member liked theirs. Captain Lisa Harper wanted hers black and strong. First Officer Tony Black added 2 sugars. Then no cream. Engineer Sam Peters liked his coffee so light it was almost white. Jake cracked eggs into a large bowl and began whisking them. The ship's kitchen was small but well organized. Everything had its place, and Jake knew where everything belonged. He had spent 3 years learning every corner of this room, every tool, every shelf. The ship hummed softly around him as it traveled through space. The New Horizon was not a fancy vessel. She was a working ship built to carry supplies from one planet to another. Her crew was good people, though. They worked hard and treated each other like family. Jake started cooking the eggs in a large pan. The smell filled the small kitchen. Soon, crew members would start coming to the dining hall for breakfast. Jake would serve them hot food and listen to their stories about home, about their families, about their dreams. 3 years ago, Jake had been a different man. He had been Sergeant First Class Jacob Martinez, a soldier who fought in wars on distant planets. He had led men into battle and brought most of them home. But not all of them. The memories of the ones who did not come home still woke him up. At night sometimes, after the war ended, Jake had left the military. He did not want to fight anymore. He wanted peace. He wanted a quiet life where nobody got hurt. When he saw the job posting for a ship's cook, it seemed perfect. No weapons, no battles, just good food and peaceful days. The dining hall door opened and Amy Lewis walked in. She was 19 years old and new to space travel. This was her first job on a ship, working as a communications officer. She was always cheerful and reminded Jake of his little sister back on Earth. "Morning, Jake," Amy said with a smile. "Something smells really good in here." "It's just eggs and toast," Jake replied, filling a plate for her. "Coffee is ready, too." Amy took her plate and sat at one of the tables. "I still can't believe how good your cooking is. The last ship I heard about had a cook who could barely make soup without burning it." Jake poured Amy's coffee and brought it to her table. "Practice makes perfect, I guess." More crew members began arriving for breakfast. Tony Black came in looking tired from his night shift on the bridge. Engineer Sam Peters sat with his usual group of mechanics. Dr. Karen White, the ship's doctor, read a medical journal while eating her eggs. Captain Harper walked in and nodded to Jake. She was a fair leader who cared about her crew. Jake respected her, even though he sometimes disagreed with her decisions. She was too trusting, too willing to help strangers. In space, that could be dangerous. "Morning, Jake," Captain Harper said. "Any chance you have some of that strawberry jam left?" Jake brought her a small jar of jam he had made from fruit they had picked up at their last stop. "Here you go, Captain." "You spoil us," she said, spreading the jam on her toast. "I don't know what we would do without you." Jake returned to the kitchen to start preparing lunch. This was his life now. Simple, peaceful, predictable. He chopped vegetables and seasoned meat, thinking about the herb garden he kept in a small corner of the kitchen. The plants grew well under the artificial lights, and they made his cooking taste better. The ship's intercom crackled to life. "All hands, this is the bridge. We have received a distress signal from a civilian vessel. We are changing course to investigate." Jake stopped chopping and listened. Distress signals in space were serious business. Ships broke down, people got hurt, and sometimes pirates used fake distress signals to trap other vessels. Jake had learned about these tricks during his military days. He walked to the bridge and found Captain Harper studying a screen. "What kind of distress signal?" Jake asked. "Ship says they have engine trouble and life support is failing," Tony Black answered. "Looks like a small passenger vessel." Jake looked at the screen. Something felt wrong, but he could not put his finger on what it was. How far away are they? About 6 hours at current speed, Captain Harper said. We should be able to reach them in time to help. Are we sure it's real? Jake asked quietly. Captain Harper looked at him with surprise. Of course it's real. Why? Would you think otherwise? Jake shrugged. Just being careful. Space can be dangerous. We have a duty to help people in trouble, Captain Harper said firmly. That's what good people do. Jake nodded but said nothing more. He trusted Captain Harper, but old habits from his military days made him worry. In war, things that seemed safe often turned out to be deadly traps. He returned to his kitchen and continued preparing lunch. The crew would be hungry when they finished their shifts. Jake chopped vegetables and stirred soup, but his mind kept thinking about the distress signal. Something about it bothered him, like a bad taste that would not go away. The ship changed course, and Jake felt the slight shift in the artificial gravity. They were heading toward the signal now. In 6 hours, they would know if Jake's worries were real or just the fears of an old soldier who had seen too much war. Jake finished preparing lunch and started planning dinner. Whatever happened, his crew would need good food. That was his job now, and he was good at it. He was just the ship's cook, nothing more. 6 hours later, Jake was cleaning dishes when the ship's engines slowed down. They had reached the distress signal. He dried his hands and walked to the nearest window. Outside, in the darkness of space, he could see another ship floating nearby. The other vessel looked damaged. Its hull was dark and no lights were showing. Jake squinted at it through the window. Something still felt wrong, but he could not tell what it was. Maybe it was just his old soldier instincts acting up again. All crew to stations, Captain Harper's voice came over the intercom. We are approaching the disabled vessel. Prepare for possible rescue operations. Jake returned to his kitchen. If they were taking on survivors, he would need to prepare extra food. He started pulling out supplies when the ship shuddered slightly. They had connected to the other vessel. Through the kitchen door, Jake could hear footsteps in the corridor. Heavy boots on metal floors, more footsteps than there should be. The New Horizon crew wore soft shoes that did not make much noise. These sounded different. Jake moved quietly to the door and peered out. Armed figures in dark armor were walking down the corridor. They carried weapons and moved like soldiers, but they were not human soldiers. Jake could tell by their strange shapes and the way they moved. Pirates. Jake's blood went cold. The distress signal had been a trap, just like he had feared. One of the pirates saw Jake looking through the door. The alien creature had gray skin and 4 arms. It pointed a weapon at Jake and made a harsh sound that might have been laughter. All crew to the cargo bay now, a voice said over the intercom, but it was not Captain Harper's voice. The accent was strange and cold. Anyone who resists will be shot. Jake backed away from the door. He could hear crew members in the corridors, confused and frightened. Some of them were asking questions. Others were crying. Jake's hands started to shake, not from fear, but from anger. He moved to the kitchen window and looked out again. The other ship was not damaged at all. Its lights were now on, and Jake could see weapons pointed at the New Horizon. They had been fooled completely. Move faster, humans, the alien voice said over the intercom. We do not have all day. Jake heard Amy Lewis crying in the corridor. She was scared and alone, probably wondering what was happening. Jake wanted to help her, but he forced himself to stay hidden. He needed to think. The footsteps moved away from the kitchen area. Jake waited a few minutes, then carefully opened the corridor was empty now. He could hear voices coming from the cargo bay. Angry alien voices and frightened human ones. Jake made his way quietly toward the cargo bay. He stayed in the shadows and moved carefully. His old military training was coming back to him. Move quietly, stay hidden, watch everything. From a hiding spot behind some boxes, Jake could see into the cargo bay. The entire crew was there, sitting on the floor with their hands behind their heads. Pirates with weapons stood around them. Watching. Jake counted the pirates. 12 of them visible, probably more on their own ship. They were different species. Some looked like the gray 4-armed creature he had seen. Others were taller with green skin. All of them carried advanced weapons. Captain Harper was on the ground near the front of the group. There was blood on her uniform. Jake's heart sank when he realized she was not moving. Tony Black was beside her, holding his arm. He was hurt but still alive. A large alien with red skin and metal implants on his head walked in front of the crew. He was obviously the leader. His voice was the one Jake had heard on the intercom. "I am Captain Vex Corthane," the alien said in his strange accent. "You are now my prisoners. Your ship and everything on it belongs to me." Amy Lewis was crying harder now. She was just a kid, scared and far from home. Jake felt his anger growing. "Stronger. We will search your ship and take everything valuable," Corthane continued. "Then we will decide what to do with you. Some of you might be worth keeping alive for ransom, others ... He made a sound that might have been laughter. Two pirates grabbed Amy by her arms and started pulling her toward the door. She screamed and tried to fight, but she was too small and weak. "Let me go," Amy cried. "Please let me go." Jake watched from his hiding place as they dragged her away. The other crew members looked terrified. Some of them tried to help Amy, but the pirates hit them with their weapons. Something inside Jake snapped. These people were not just his crewmates. They were his family. For 3 years he had cooked for them, talked with them, shared stories with them. Amy was like a little sister to him. Tony Black was a good friend. Even Captain Harper, who was now lying dead on the floor, had been someone Jake respected. Jake closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He had left the military because he did not want to fight anymore. He had become a cook because he wanted peace. But sometimes peace was not an option. He opened his eyes and looked at the pirates again. They thought they were dealing with helpless cargo ship crew. They had no idea that the quiet cook hiding in the shadows had once been a decorated soldier who specialized in impossible missions. Jake moved quietly back toward his kitchen. He had work to do, but this time he would not be cooking food. He would be preparing for war. The pirates had made a mistake. They had hurt his family. Now they would learn what happened when you threatened someone a human cared about. Jake moved through his kitchen like a different person. His hands were steady now, and his mind was sharp. He was no longer just a cook. He was Sergeant First Class Jacob Martinez, and he had a mission. First, he needed weapons. Jake opened the cabinet where he kept his knives. He selected 3 of his sharpest blades and tested their weight. They were not military weapons, but they would work. He also took a meat hammer and a long fork used for checking roasts. Next, Jake looked at his supplies. The kitchen had many things that could be dangerous if used the right way. He mixed cleaning chemicals in a small container. The mixture would create a gas that would burn eyes and throats. He filled several containers with boiling oil from the deep fryer. Hot oil was better than bullets for close fighting. Jake opened the spice cabinet and grabbed a container of ground pepper. He mixed it with salt and some cleaning powder. When thrown in someone's face, it would blind them for several minutes. He put the mixture in small bags he could carry easily. The ship's ventilation system had openings in every room. Jake had noticed them during his 3 years of cooking, but he had never thought about them as escape routes. Now he studied the small metal grates carefully. They were just big enough for a person to crawl through. Jake used a screwdriver to remove the grate in his kitchen. The opening led to a narrow tunnel that connected to other parts of the ship. He had memorized the ship's layout during his years of walking the corridors. Now that knowledge would help him move without being seen. Before he left the kitchen, Jake did one more thing. He turned on all the stoves and ovens, then placed several pots of oil to heat up. If anyone came looking for him, they would get a nasty surprise. Jake crawled into the ventilation tunnel with his weapons and supplies. The tunnel was dark and narrow, but he moved quietly. He could hear voices below him as he crawled over different rooms. Most of the pirates were in the cargo bay with the prisoners, but some were searching the ship. He reached a grate that looked down into the communications room. One pirate was there, looking through Amy's equipment. The alien had green skin and long arms. It was focused on the computer screens and not watching for danger. Jake carefully removed the grate and dropped down into the room. He landed behind the pirate without making a sound. The alien turned around just as Jake struck with his knife. The pirate went down quickly and quietly. Jake searched the pirate's body and found a small communication device. He could use it to listen to what the other pirates were saying. He also took the alien's weapon, though he was not sure how to use it yet. Moving back into the ventilation system, Jake crawled to the next room. This was the engine room, where 3 pirates were looking at the ship's power systems. Jake needed to be more careful here. 3 against 1 was harder than 1 against 1. Jake remembered something from his military days. Sometimes the best weapon was fear. He opened one of his containers of gas mixture and poured it into the room's air system. Within minutes, the 3 pirates were coughing and their eyes were burning. They stumbled around, trying to find the source of the gas. Jake dropped down while they were confused and blinded. He used his meat hammer to knock out the first pirate. The second one swung at him, but Jake was ready. He threw his pepper mixture in the alien's face and struck with his knife. The third pirate tried to run, but Jake was faster. In 10 minutes, Jake had eliminated 4 pirates without making enough noise to alert the others. He was starting to feel like his old self again. The peaceful cook was gone. The soldier had returned. Jake moved through the ventilation system toward the crew quarters. His communication device was picking up chatter from the other pirates. They were wondering why their friends had stopped responding. Soon they would send more pirates to investigate. In the crew quarters, Jake found 2 more pirates going through personal belongings. They were laughing about something they had found in Amy's room. Jake's anger flared up again. These aliens thought they could take whatever they wanted, hurt whoever they wanted. Jake used his boiling oil on these 2. He poured it through the ventilation grate while they were distracted. Their screams were loud, but Jake did not care anymore. He wanted the other pirates to know that something was hunting them. The communication device crackled with angry voices. The pirates were getting scared. They were starting to realize that their friends were not just ignoring them. Someone was fighting back. Jake made his way toward the medical bay. If there were any crew members who had been hurt, Dr. Karen White would have tried to help them. But when he looked through the grate, he saw something that made his blood boil. Amy Lewis was tied to a chair in the medical bay. 2 pirates were standing over her, and one was holding a sharp tool near her face. They were threatening her, trying to make her tell them where the ship's valuables were hidden. Jake did not hesitate. He kicked out the grate and dropped into the room. The first pirate turned toward him, but Jake was already moving. He threw his knife and caught the alien in the chest. The second pirate raised his weapon, but Jake was faster. He used his fork to strike at the alien's throat. Amy looked up at Jake with tears in her eyes. "Jake, how did you—" "What are you doing?" Jake cut the ropes that held Amy to the chair. "I'm getting you out of here," he said. "Can you walk?" Nodded, though she was shaking. "I thought they were going to kill me. They're not going to hurt you anymore," Jake said. "I promise." Jake led Amy back to the ventilation system. He helped her climb up and told her to follow the tunnel to the kitchen. "Hide there until I come back," he said. "Don't come out for anyone except me." Jake's communication device was buzzing with activity now. The pirate captain was angry and scared. He was sending more of his crew to find whoever was killing his people. Jake smiled grimly. Let them come. He was just getting started. Jake moved through the ship like a ghost. He had eliminated 8 pirates now, and the remaining ones were getting scared. Through his stolen communication device, he could hear Captain Corthane shouting orders. The pirate leader was angry and confused. "Find this human," Corthane's voice crackled through the device. "He is just one man. You are trained warriors. Kill him now." Jake smiled as he crawled through the ventilation tunnels. They still thought he was just a cook. They had no idea what they were really fighting against. Jake reached the main corridor and looked down through a grate. 3 pirates were walking together, their weapons ready. They were scared to be alone now. Jake had taught them to fear the shadows. Jake had been busy while moving through the ship. He had rigged several traps using things from his kitchen. Cooking oil on the floors made them slippery. Thin wire stretched across doorways would trip anyone running. Containers of hot soup balanced above doors would fall on whoever opened them. The 3 pirates below were walking carefully, looking at every shadow. Jake opened a valve in the ventilation system and released more of his gas mixture. The air around the pirates became thick and hard to breathe. They started coughing and stumbling. While they were distracted, Jake activated one of his traps. A container of boiling water fell from the ceiling, splashing all 3 pirates. They screamed and ran, but Jake had made the floor slippery with oil. 2 of them fell hard. The third one made it around the corner, but Jake was ready. Jake dropped down from the ventilation system and landed behind the running pirate. He used his meat hammer to knock the alien unconscious. Then he went back to deal with the other 2, who were still on the ground, injured and confused. The communication device was buzzing with panic now. The pirates were reporting that something was wrong with the ship's air and that their friends were disappearing. Captain Corthane was getting more angry with each report. Jake made his way toward the cargo bay where his crew was being held. He needed to see how many pirates were left and what weapons they had. But first, he had one more trap to set. Jake went to the ship's main power control room. He knew how to operate these systems from his years on the ship. He began changing the settings for gravity, lights, and air circulation. Soon, different parts of the ship would become very uncomfortable for the pirates. In some rooms, Jake made the gravity twice as heavy as normal. In others, he made it so light that the pirates would float. He turned off the lights in several corridors and made the air very hot in other areas. The ship was becoming his weapon, Jake's communication device. Crackled with Corthane's voice again. "Enough of this," the pirate captain said. "Bring 3 of the human prisoners to the bridge. If this ghost does not surrender, I will space them." Jake's blood went cold. Spacing someone meant throwing them out of the ship into the vacuum of space. It was a horrible way to die. He had to move faster now. Jake crawled through the ventilation system toward the cargo bay. When he got there, he could see his crew members sitting on the floor, still guarded by 4 pirates. Tony Black was holding his injured arm but looked alert. Dr. Karen White was trying to help the wounded crew members without medical supplies. Jake watched as 3 pirates grabbed random crew members and dragged them toward the door. One of them was Sam Peters, the engineer. Another was Lisa Chang, who worked in communications. The third was young Bobby Miller, who was only 22 years old. Jake had to make a choice. He could try to save these 3, or he could continue hunting the remaining pirates. But he knew that if he did not stop Corthane soon, more crew members would die. Jake made his decision. He would go to the bridge and face the pirate captain directly. But first, he needed to help his crew in the cargo bay. Jake opened several containers of his pepper mixture and poured them into the cargo bay's air system. Within minutes, the 4 pirates guarding the crew were coughing and rubbing their eyes. Jake dropped down from the ventilation system while they were distracted. "Everyone stay down," Jake shouted to his crew as he fought the 4 pirates. His knife moved quickly and his meat hammer struck hard. In less than 2 minutes, all 4 pirates were down. The crew members stared at Jake in shock. They had never seen him fight before. He was covered in sweat and had small cuts on his arms, but his eyes were sharp and focused. "Jake," Tony Black said, staring at him, "what are you doing?" "How did you ... I'm getting us out of this," Jake said simply. "Tony, can you walk?" Tony nodded, though he was still holding his injured arm. "What do you need me to do?" Jake quickly explained his plan. Tony would lead the crew to the kitchen and the medical bay, where they would be safer. Jake would go to the bridge and deal with Captain Corthane. "But Jake," Dr. Karen White said, "there are still too many of them. You can't fight them all alone." Jake looked at his crew, these people who had become his family. "I'm not just a cook," he said quietly. "I used to be a soldier, and soldiers protect their people." Before anyone could ask more questions, Jake was gone, disappearing back into the ventilation system. He had a pirate captain to hunt and 3 crew members to save. The communication device in his pocket crackled with Corthane's voice. "You have 10 minutes to surrender, Ghost. After that, your friends will learn what space feels like. Jake smiled grimly as he crawled toward the bridge. Captain Corthane was about to learn what happened when you threatened a human's family. Jake crawled through the ventilation system toward the bridge. His body ached from fighting, but his mind was clear. He had one mission left: save his 3 crew members and stop Captain Corthane forever, through the communication device. Jake could hear the pirate captain talking to his remaining crew. There were only 6 pirates left alive, including Corthane himself. The others were either dead or had fled back to their own ship. Jake reached the bridge and looked down through the grate. Captain Corthane was standing in the center of the room, his red skin darker with anger. The 3 captured crew members were tied to chairs near the main window. Sam Peters had blood on his face. Lisa Chang was crying quietly. Young Bobby Miller looked terrified. 5 pirates surrounded Corthane, their weapons pointed at the prisoners. Jake counted the aliens carefully. The gray 4-armed one he had seen earlier was there. 2 tall green-skinned pirates stood near. The door, another alien with metal pieces in its head, operated the ship's controls. Corthane himself was the biggest and most dangerous looking. "Time is up, Ghost," Corthane spoke into his communication device. "Show yourself or watch your friends die." Jake had been preparing for this moment. He had rigged his final trap while crawling through the tunnels. The bridge had emergency systems that could seal it off from the rest of the ship. Jake had connected those systems to the kitchen's gas lines. When he triggered it, the bridge would fill with his blinding gas mixture. Jake took a deep breath and kicked out the grate. He dropped onto the bridge behind the pirates, landing silently. Before anyone could react, Jake pressed the button on. His small device. Gas began pouring into the bridge from the air vents. The pirates started coughing and their eyes began to water. But Jake had prepared for this. He had cloth over his nose and mouth, and he knew exactly where everyone was standing. The first pirate to react was the gray 4-armed one. It swung its weapon toward Jake, but Jake was already moving. He threw his knife and caught the alien in the chest. The pirate fell backward, crashing into the ship's controls. The 2 green-skinned pirates near the door tried to run, but Jake had made the floor slippery with oil. They slipped and fell hard. Jake was on them before they could get up, using his meat hammer to knock them unconscious. The alien with metal in its head fired a weapon at Jake, but the gas made it hard to aim. The blast hit the wall beside Jake's head. Jake rolled to the side and threw his pepper mixture at the alien's face. The pirate screamed and dropped its weapon. Now only Captain Corthane was left standing. The large red alien was coughing from the gas, but he was still dangerous. He grabbed Bobby Miller and held a sharp blade to the young man's throat. "Stay back, human," Corthane said, his voice rough from the gas. "Come closer and this one dies." Jake stopped moving. Bobby was just a kid, scared and far from home. Jake would not let him get hurt. "Let him go," Jake said calmly. "Your fight is with me, not with them." Corthane laughed, a harsh sound. "You think you have won? You are just a cook? I am a warrior who has conquered 100 ships." "You're right," Jake said, moving slowly to the side. "I am just a cook. But I cook for my family, and nobody hurts my family." Jake pulled out his last weapon, a long, sharp fork he used for checking meat. It was not much, but it would have to do. He also had one more container of boiling oil hidden in his belt. Corthane pushed Bobby away and raised his own blade. "Then die, cook." The 2 fighters circled each other on the bridge. Corthane was bigger and stronger, but Jake was faster and smarter. The gas was clearing now, and Jake could see everything clearly. Corthane attacked first, swinging his blade. In a wide arc, Jake ducked under the swing and stabbed with his fork. The points caught Corthane in the arm, and the alien roared with pain and anger. Jake rolled away as Corthane's blade crashed down where he had been standing. The weapon stuck in the metal floor for a moment, giving Jake his chance. He threw his container of boiling oil at Corthane's face. The alien screamed and stumbled backward, clawing at his burned skin. Jake pressed his attack, using his fork like a spear. But Corthane was tough. Even hurt and partially blinded, he kept fighting. The Battle moved around the bridge. Corthane knocked over chairs and smashed control panels as he tried to catch Jake. Jake used his knowledge of the room to stay out of reach, striking when he could and dodging when he had to. Finally, Jake saw his opening. Corthane stumbled over one of the unconscious pirates and fell to one knee. Jake jumped forward and struck with his fork, catching the alien in the throat. Corthane's eyes went wide with surprise. Then he fell forward and did not move again. Jake stood over the dead pirate captain, breathing hard. It was over. The ship was safe. Jake quickly untied his 3 crew members. Bobby Miller was shaking, but unhurt. Lisa Chang hugged Jake and cried. Sam Peters looked at him with new respect. "How did you do all this?" Sam asked. "You're just a cook," Jake smiled tiredly. "I used to be a soldier, but I like cooking better." Over the next few hours, Jake helped the crew get the ship working again. The surviving pirates fled in their own damaged vessel. Tony Black took command as the new captain, Dr. Karen. White treated the wounded crew members. The crew looked at Jake differently now. They knew he was more than just a cook. He was their protector, their guardian. But Jake did not want special treatment. He just wanted to return to his kitchen and his quiet life. That evening, Jake prepared a special meal for the crew. It was a memorial dinner for Captain Harper and the crew members who had died. As he cooked, Jake thought about the battle and what it meant. He had left the military because he was tired of fighting. But sometimes fighting was necessary to protect the people you loved. Jake had learned that being a soldier and being a cook were not so different. Both jobs were about taking care of people. The New Horizon continued its journey through space, carrying its cargo and its crew. In the kitchen, Jake Martinez returned to his pots and pans, his herbs and spices. He was just the ship's cook again, but his family knew the truth. When they needed him, he would always be ready to fight for them.